evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Talk Football episode with Dan and Jesse. This evening's show is going to be focusing around the Tottenham, their rise back to the Champions League under Conte. Didn't start too well under Nuno. Couldn't even get a manager in at one point, but eventually they got themselves turned around and they're now back into the top four, back into the Champions League, and probably in pole position for remaining in that position going into next season. So we're going to break that down. We're going to look at the highs, the lows. We're going to look at the transfer situation that's got going on, any news that we can bring, and just give our opinion on whether or not we think that Tottenham are going to be rising, falling, or potentially just staying where they are. So, Jesse, probably going to kick it off where it all began. They didn't do well bringing any players in, managers in, did they? They had a couple of memes going round and eventually ended up with Nuno. So just to kick us off, where did you think it all went wrong?
Yeah, I think that they were just in a very precarious position last summer. They didn't know what they wanted. They went for Conte. They failed to get him, ironically, getting him later on. And I think it was November, because I think we transitioned over from Ollie in December, early December.
Yeah.
So yeah, the memes were out there. The memes were out there of, failed 11 managers that they could have gone, but weren't able to convince to come into the club. Finally, situating on Nuno Espirito Santo. And to be fair, they started off well. So first day of the season, I mean, they beat City 1-0. I'm looking at it now. Wolves, they beat 1-0. Now, at that time, Wolves were really struggling to score goals for those first 3 or 4 weeks.
They were solid.
But they were solid. Yeah, they weren't easy to break down, but they beat them, a very good team. Watford, you'd expect them to beat going into September. This is where it starts to get a little dicey, and this is where, again, actually, I should have probably prefaced this. A lot of Spurs fans didn't want Nuno, and for obvious reasons. I mean, he was their 10th or 11th choice, so that's fairly obvious. But going into September, it's 3-0 to Crystal Palace.
Yeah. Chelsea,
big rivals, beat them 3-0. September 26th, Arsenal, even bigger rivals, beat them 3-1. So they had a really dicey start, a lot of inconsistencies, but overall, I think the signs were there from the very beginning. When you bring in a manager who the fan base don't want, it's typically not going to end well. So.
Yeah, it's a strange one, because for me, Nuno had done a great job at Wolves. They've become a solid team. They've become pretty dependable. They'd bought well. Transfers had come in. They got performances out of players, which not many people are kind of recognised as being Premier League quality. But when he was at Wolves, for me, I felt like his time was up. Yeah, his time was up. He kind of outstayed his welcome at Wolves, and it was time for them to move on to somebody else in Bruno Lage in the end that they brought in, and that has been a very good situation for Wolves. It was odd that they did struggle for so long in bringing in a manager, because this is Tottenham, they're a big club, and it does beg a question as to why they weren't able to convince certain managers that they missed out on that they were the right project for them. They have the players. It's not as if though they don't have money as a budget to be able to build a team, and there's already a strong foundation as they are. So that did beg a question as to what the turn-off was, whether or not these clubs saw there was better options, or whether or not a little bit of Tottenham's history when it came to managers and the way that they've had business done in the transfer window, or just general dealings with other clubs, caused some form of a problem. So it would have been interesting as to why that eventually was he the choice in the end. But as you've mentioned, bringing in a manager who isn't anybody's first choice or second choice is doomed to fail. It very rarely does a manager who nobody wanted ever really succeed. So it was doomed to fail from the start. And that's where I think we move on and go into the interesting changes that came on. Jesse, you got any other points before we go on to our next point, mate?
Yeah, I think that they've done really well to bring in Perisic from Juventus. And that could very well be the reason why a little bit of the relationships have been restored. I think they had made their reputation very clear, or not their reputation very clear. I think it was very obvious that the reputation going around Tottenham is that any managers coming in underneath Enoch and Levy weren't going to get the players they want. They were going to be tough negotiators and ultimately would scrounge for cash. Paratici's done enormously well to kind of restore a little bit of their reputation. And I think that's where you're going to see, along with Conte, because the only reason why they got Conte was, first off, United didn't want him because we didn't want someone who was going to blow up our back room, which ironically Ralph did anyways. But also Paratici has a really good relationship, obviously, across the entire scope of Italian coaches, players, whatever you may have. So I think that Paratici might be a key component into the recovery and the resurgence that Spurs have had. I just wanted to add that in there.
So. Yeah, no, of course. So you think he's obviously would be the difference, being that middleman between the manager and Daniel Levy, who is notorious within multiple fan bases of being someone who is difficult. I would say is probably a word, challenging to deal with, a man who knows his job, and he's pretty stubborn with the way that he does his business. So that well could be the difference between where they were and where they are going, shall we say. And just before we move on, I'm going to say thanks very much for the viewers who've got currently in the chat. We really appreciate it. If you can put a comment in, we'd really, really appreciate that. Put a like on. And anything you want to add to the conversation, please stick it in the comments and we'll address it straight away, definitely. And thank you again for watching. So with that there, I think you hit on a really good point when it came to Tottenham transfers being the problem. I think that's so important to managers. And then it kind of begs the question as to how did they get Antonio Conte, a man who is so well known for being very clear and straight down the line with how he wants things done. He tells them, these are the players I want. And if I don't get these players, you don't let me do my job. He is happy to walk away. He's a winner in the Premier League. He's a winner in Serie A. He is a manager who has not got a long wait between the job that he wants and moving on to the next one. He's more than capable of taking any job that he wants. He's a manager in demand. So bringing Conte in there, big move for Tottenham. I thought it was very ambitious, and it has paid off this season. It has paid off, but not without some ups and downs along the way. Most famously, just after the Man City win, playing midweek against Burnley, being utterly toothless and losing 1-0. And Conte gave us a very, very rare look into the frustrations of a manager. He was incredibly impassioned when he came to his criticism of the players, the situation that was ongoing at Tottenham at the time, and as to whether or not this was the right place for him. He even mentioned he had to consider his options and could have walked away from the club within a matter of months from joining. So going forward there, do you think there's a risk of that happening again?
I'm not sure if that will happen again, especially if he's given the tools and resources that he wants. In that stretch, I think it was 5 losses on the bounce. So 2-0 Chelsea, 3 to Southampton, 3-2 to Southampton, 2-0 to Wolves again. They beat Wolves the first time, actually. 3-2 to... They beat Man City 3-2, but then Burnley. So 4 out of 5 losses. And I think the direct quotes basically from Conte after that game was, I don't do this. Tottenham may do this, but I don't do this.
That's right.
And he was still frustrated. This is just after the January transfer window. They brought in Kulusevski. They brought in Bentancur. Bentancur was not necessarily someone we really knew about. Kulusevski, we didn't really know about.
Wasn't well known either, except on an international stage recently playing for Sweden. Otherwise, he was not well known.
Exactly, and he really wanted Diaz, as well as I think another target at the very least, maybe 1 or 2 more.
Adama Traore.
There you go. And so he was incredibly frustrated at that point in time when you don't give Conte what he wants.
Yeah,
you feel the wrath of him, or you will at some point, especially if the results don't go his way, which is basically why he came out saying, look, I don't care about your history, but when you have me at your club, we don't do this. So I think that there was a lot there left to be desired. I think the rest of the season, obviously, like you mentioned, there were ups and downs. But as Conte does, once he got all of his players under the wing, got everyone fighting on the right side, a little bit of a siege mentality, they ended up picking up some results near the end of the season that ultimately recovered it. So, do I see there being ups and downs next season? Yes, but I see there being less. And I think you're starting to see the evidence that we'll get into later about how Levy and Enoch are willing to pump in more money and support this manager because I think they see a good thing coming. And I think that this may just be their opportunity to dig themselves out of a hole that they've been digging themselves into for 5 or 6 years or 4 years, 3 years since Poch left, but really 4 years because that last little stint wasn't great with Poch.
No. And I think that's an interesting point that you make there about Enoch, Daniel Levy having to back Antonio Conte. I don't think they have a choice. It's something that they haven't done particularly well, even in recent history. Back in January, the very famous stories that actually surrounded Adama Traore and Luis Diaz, which for our viewers who aren't aware, I'll kind of enlighten us to the situation. What happened was, for the Luis Diaz signing, Tottenham had been working very hard on negotiating the price down from his release clause, which started at 80 million euros, eventually moving down to an agreed fee of somewhere around 54 million pounds or 60 million euros, which is the total fee that Liverpool ended up paying. But the interesting fact being is that Tottenham had done all of the work. They had negotiated the price, they negotiated the wage, and they negotiated all of the add-ons, all of the situation that Porto would have been happy taking. And immediately, having put the phone down to Tottenham in a metaphorical way, picked the phone up to Liverpool and said, by the way, this is the deal that Tottenham have on the table. Would you accept this offer? And Liverpool said yes, and took the signing. And that must have been what, firstly, was incredibly embarrassing for Tottenham. Embarrassing enough so that Daniel Levy actually made a complaint to John Henry, owner of Liverpool, about the way that Liverpool went around their business, the negotiation, which ultimately they'd done nothing wrong. It was actually quite Tottenham-like. Tottenham have on numerous occasions taken players from Liverpool, quite famously players like Clint Dempsey and Gylfi Sigurdsson, the two players that Liverpool were interested in signing and ultimately were taken by Tottenham. So it was a taste of their own medicine. But on the flip side was Adama Traore. Now, this was less possible based on the player's preference on where he wanted to go. They did faff around on the price. The price was £20 million. And it was 12, it was 15, it was 12, it was 15, and the price never really moved. And they fumbled. And what happened in the end was Barcelona came in and realised that if they contacted Adama Traore, he was happy to leave for the price, which was 20 million, on a loan deal with an option to purchase if they want to. But then also, he plays for the club for £10,000 a week. He took such an enormous pay cut. He was the only place he wanted to go. So they ended up with Kulusevski, fantastic player, has been a brilliant signing for them. There's a strong belief he stays on a loan deal this season coming with an obligation to buy, which will be great business for Tottenham, because if he turns out to have a downward season, then they can make the decisions up as to whether or not he's the right player for them. So that was great business. Bentancur has been a solid enough player, not quite lit up as much as he wanted. So the transfers worked out, but they weren't the transfers he wanted. Antonio Conte. So I think going forward, the only signing that we're fully aware of that has been done as a done deal is Ivan Perisic, who has come in on a free transfer and is a very, very Antonio Conte signing. Jesse, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's about as Antonio Conte as you can get. I think 32 or 33 years old. He's not going to be on massive wages. He'll be on enough. He'll make his money on a free transfer. Utility player, can play wing back, can play left wing, can play right wing. Yeah, it's a very Antonio Conte player. And I also think what was I thinking of? Oh no! First off, I was thinking about Bruno and how these guys have previous with missing out.
Oh, they have previous.
Yeah, going from Bruno to Lo Celso and then saying, well, we didn't want him anyways. But the fact is, that was even worse. That situation was even worse because they did a lot of the legwork for United. And then despite the fact that it was in the summer, we were still backing out because we do kind of the same thing at United. But then we came in during the January and ended up getting him anyways. I think they panicked and they got Lo Celso, to be fair. But
yeah,
they have this issue with scrounging for cash that they really don't need to have because they make a lot of money. I do understand that the stadium and the training ground and all that, you had set them back around 1.5 billion or 1 billion or whatever it was, which is obviously a lot of cash.
yeah.
But when it comes to their signings, I expect to see more of these Perisic signings than I expect to see otherwise, because I expect to see a lot of experience come in. I expect to see a lot of players come in who do kind of your more boring, typical utility jobs, especially in midfield. But that's kind of where they're going to be looking. And if you can trust what the media is saying about Enoch and Levy pumping in 150 million pounds,
Yeah.
I do think you can expect a lot of transfer business to be done. And that's why I say maybe, just maybe, with Paratici there in the year of Levy, you might be looking at a little bit of a change, because I think when you have a world-class manager who you have evidence to say that he can take you to the next level,
Yeah.
and you have Champions League football, I think it's safe to say that if there is a change at any point in Spurs' recent or future, like nearby future, I think this is the opportunity to go ahead and take advantage of that. So
it's an enormous opportunity because we've discussed off air, we've discussed in our discords that Tottenham were the best of the rest. That's how they came forth. They were the best of the rest. They weren't brilliant, but neither was Arsenal, neither was Manchester United, neither was West Ham. They all had different situations they had to be dealing with at the time, either on the pitch, off the pitch, or in European competitions for West Ham situations. So it is interesting there is that this is an enormous opportunity for Tottenham, a Tottenham opportunity which I don't think they've ever had. I don't think they've ever been in a situation with a manager who has won so much, who has won leagues in the Premier League. He's also won the league in Italy. He's a manager who is straight down the line. He will play a particular style of football. He will want a particular style of player. He will tell them which players that he wants. And we've had a little bit of a dig sort of into the rumours going round whilst we were off air, looking as to who's going to be brought in at Tottenham. And it's interesting because the links are a little bit tenuous with certain players. Like one of the most recent ones is Gabriel Jesus. Could you see that being a signing that they would make, Jesse?
I've told you that I think. I mean, the evidence is also in on that. So when you look at it, you've got Ken Kulusevski and Son that are going to be major players for Tottenham next season. Now their depth isn't much better. You have Lucas Mora. I don't know what's happening with him, but I'm sure they're going to try to keep him.
I think he wants to leave, actually, but there's not been much talk. There's a lot of talk around Bergwijn now.
There you go. If they want to go ahead and get rid of him, which I would advise against, but if he wants to leave, ultimately he's going to be put on the market.
He does want to leave, yeah. His recent comments for Holland, he actually said that the situation isn't great and he needs to find a way out. So, yeah, he is. Yeah, I think he's done at that club.
Gotcha. And so I think when it comes to Gabby, I think that it's more of a smokescreen. I really do think it's more of a smokescreen. Not that he couldn't do a job for Tottenham, and not that there's a place for him in the squad. Because I've said this before to you, Dan. I think that a player like Gabby Jesus, who's won 4 leagues in 5 years, would rate himself to be able to get into that squad, because he can play right wing, and he will get rotated in and out of the number 9 position. Now the question is it a real link or is it a smokescreen because Arsenal are going in for him and Man City won 5 to 10 more million pounds for Gabby Jesus? So I think that's the real question. Whether or not they could get him, again, I've told you my opinion on this. I think, and I was convinced by Patrick on the Football Terrace just earlier today, that if it were a horse race between Arsenal and Tottenham, I was thinking Arsenal has all the advantages. Same city, prestigious club, if not more.
Yeah.
And you're going to get the same sort of salary plus the same sort of money for the deal going
Of
in.
course. I mean, for me, there's a balancing act there for the Arsenal situation for Jesus. Just as it stands with Tottenham, he has a downside, which is ultimately he is going to have to fight for his place. It's as simple as that. He will have to fight for his place. Harry Kane, Son, Kulusevski, he's sort of coming in as a rotational option at Tottenham for me, not as a starting player, which he would. He would be the first name in the attacking lineup at Arsenal, which is, it depends on the player's ambition and profile and what he really wants out of his game. Is he happy to fight for his place, or is he saying, you know what? No, I've had enough of fighting from a place at Man City. I want to come in there and be the main man. I've got my time now to be the main man. But then there's the other side of the coin, which is now Tottenham has Champions League football and Antonio Conte, where Arsenal doesn't. Arsenal currently has a young new manager in Arteta. They are improving. Progress is being made. However, it's a step down, at least for this season, for Gabriel Jesus to go and play in the Europa League when he has been spoiled for choice playing the Champions League for the last 4 seasons whilst at City. So that's going to be very interesting. For me, I think he still goes to Arsenal. It's still going to be a difficult situation for Arsenal to pull off, because I think if they are going to get the signing, they're going to have to pay. I think they'll just have to pay the money. I don't think they're going to be able to negotiate too heavily with City, because it leaves the door open for other clubs who may have a better offer at the time. So yeah, that will be an interesting one. Another name who's recently been put in there, and this was probably a kind of a midfield sort of rotation, was John McGinn. Now, I don't see that happening. I don't know what you think, because I don't see Steven Gerrard wanting to lose such a key and important, hard-working player at Aston Villa to then go and give him straight to Tottenham. For me, I don't see it happening, but I could see why it would work.
I think John McGinn works for a lot of clubs in the Premier League, especially. He's Prem proven. He's a hard worker. He's a utility player. He can fill in at either of the
everywhere.
Yeah, he really can. Like I could even see him playing right back. I don't see why clubs wouldn't be sniffing around. He is a Conte sort of player because he is all those things we just mentioned. But for me, it's kind of a resounding no. On the Gabriel Jesus one, by the way, just to add on to that, it's also like the Conte factor is massive. So I think that's going to be a massive pull for all players that they're looking to bring in this window. So
I think that's the most important part, isn't it? I think having a manager who is able to kind of it's that aura, isn't it? It's more of a manager who has got something about them. Somebody's going to say, somebody's going to, be able to convince and influence players that this is the right location for them to be, that this is the direction Tottenham are being. They have a history with underperforming and underachieving on probably every level, to be honest, whether it's league or in cups. So that will be a key factor, and I think it's going to be down to Enoch and Daniel Levy saying, which players do you want? Okay, we'll go and buy them for you. And they're going to have to kind of, not gamble, but I think they're going to have to fly in the face of how they've normally done business and just go for it and get them the right players. So just with that, how do you see next season going for Tottenham if they have a poor summer? If it kind of comes out that Tottenham, let's just hypothetically theorize that Tottenham do what Tottenham have done in the past. They kind of dilly-dally around with transfers, miss out on players that they were very close to, end up losing them to rivals or even to clubs abroad. How do we see their league going if they don't get in the kind of profile players that they want?
I don't think it's really an option for them. I think that if they don't capitalize in this market, I think that you see a very unhappy Antonio Conte, especially if they start slow or if they stagnate around mid-season. I don't think that they can afford to not have a good summer. So plain and simple, and I'll be honest, I think that Antonio Conte either has an absolute stormer of a season next season, or we see him capitulate and see that entire squad and dressing room lose their heads. So I don't think that there's a whole lot to say about Tottenham. I think that ultimately what they should be aiming for is at least being top four. I don't see where the competition comes from. I don't see Arsenal having an incredible summer, especially with the news coming out of their camp right now, given the fact that they don't even really keep their leagues quiet. I just
No.
don't think they're having an amazing summer. I think they're looking at a couple players, as we talked about on Friday, and we kind of know what they're trying to do, and none of the news is progressing that quickly. If they don't get top four next season, it will be an utter shambles with the state United's in, what we need to do, the way we need to settle, with Arsenal need to do, and it doesn't look like they're going to have an amazing summer so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, if they don't get fourth, I think Conte walks, and I think even if they don't get the right sorts of profiles of players this summer, I think Conte will. He's gonna make it well known that he's not happy. So
I agree. It almost feels like, to use an analogy as it stands now, Tottenham and Conte, it's a little bit like they've got themselves a partner who's well out of their league, and they are going to have to treat this person and spoil them rotten. That's how I see it. I've got nothing against Tottenham, so I'm just going to say how I see it. I look at them and think they're a 6 out of 10, and they've got a 10 out of 10 manager as it stands. Their manager is as it stands right now, more successful than their club has been in the last 20 years. And that's just the way it is. So for them now, they're going to have to woo Antonio Conte. They're going to have to encourage him. They're going to have to convince him. They're going to have to prove to him that he's the right man and that they're the right club. They're going to say, well, we'll back you. We'll give you what you want. You can achieve everything you want at Tottenham. We'll give you everything you need. Look at the players that we have already. We have Kane. We have Son. We're keeping them. We've got a number of other, good quality players in the team. Just give us time and we will do the business for you. And I have to concur with you. I completely agree. Top fourth is an absolutely critical situation for Tottenham. And it is critical, more so for Tottenham than it is, I would say, for Arsenal. They've just tied down Arteta for a 3-year deal. He ain't going anywhere. I think if they get Europa League again, I don't think he's going anywhere. Ten Hag has got a free hit and it's a free pass, because if he ends up taking this club 15 points higher but still doesn't get top four, his season will be a success. In the eyes of the Manchester United fans, those who are reasonable and have an idea of what's going on off the field, that you can't just go from the shambles that has been this season to, oh yeah, we're going to be competing and challenging. He goes, Ten Hag has a free hit. If he gets fifth, everyone will be happy. It'll be, yeah, that's great. Progress is being made. Let's have another good season. And then it will be United will be fighting for fourth. But for this season, I think that Conte and Tottenham, but more so for Tottenham, that fourth is really critical. Because if they miss out, I think Conte walks. I think another offer will come along. It could be a PSG. It could be another top club within Europe. Back in Italy, it could be anywhere. And they're going to have to convince him that he's in the right place, in the right project. So I couldn't agree with you more, mate. I really couldn't.
Yeah, 110%. I also think that it's important to recognize that this next season is going to be transitional for United. I don't know how we're going to do, but if they don't capitalize, let's just say Arsenal were to get top four somehow, or United. I mean, it could be either. It could be anyone. If Tottenham don't get it, you can just throw that up in the air. But the fact is, if United is given this season and Tottenham don't get into the Champions League and progress from there, and regardless if Conte stays or goes, I don't see how Tottenham without Champions League in 2024 beats out United to Champions League in 2024. I think we're going to make some moves. I think a lot of clubs are going to make a lot of moves. So they really need to capitalize on the success that they had this season, which obviously we said there's lots of ups and downs, but ultimately they did the right things in the end. And got over the line. So
I think it goes. I think it kind of goes back to that point, doesn't it? When we talk about spending and money being the most important situation, is that for Tottenham, they're in this current situation where Arsenal are slowly progressing but remain in a transitional point. You could say. I don't think a club who spent the kind of money that they have could say they're in transition, but they are, and that's the project. That is the party line that's being thrown out at Arsenal, and people seem to be believing it. Whether or not that will last another season, I don't think the fans will have the patience. They will be expecting top four next season. Manchester United is, unfortunately, this season for you, Jesse, and for all United fans, has had the most nightmarish, horrific season in living memory for the last 50 years. It's never been as bad as this. Things can only get better. I genuinely only think things can get better at United because they can't really get much worse. You're going to make a lot of moves. I think you're going to spend a lot of money because that's what United do. Now, spending a lot of money and spending it wisely are two completely different things. And that's where it's going to be really important for United, definitely. But also, I think it's going to be more important for Tottenham because spending it wisely might actually mean paying a bit more. It won't mean faffing around trying to take £3, £4, £5 million off deals and just say, okay, the smart money is to pay this price now, is to go, okay, let's close the door, let's get the negotiation over the line, and let's move on. Because if they're not quick and they're not ready to move, there's a lot of clubs as it stands right now who are ready, to jump on deals, to jump on transfers, and to pick players to the post. Because there's not a lot of talent available out there as it stands right now. And that's going to be the most important point for Tottenham. I think we've kind of come to that conclusion now, haven't we, mate? Have you got any kind of bits that you want to discuss about Tottenham, mate? Anything there?
Well, I was just going to go ahead and add on to that. I think there's a lot more unknowns for both North London clubs, for Tottenham and Arsenal, than there are for United. I think United's transfer plans for the first time in a decade are very clear who we're going for, who we're pursuing, and the sort of timelines that we're allowing players to drag these sorts of deals out for. For instance, Frenkie de Jong, if that doesn't happen by Friday this week, I'd be very surprised if we didn't move on and sign another midfielder. There's obviously already been a lot of talk about Neves. I think the valuation on that one is roughly 5 million to 7 million off. I think Wolves are willing to sell. I think we're already looking at it. And I don't know whether it's an either or situation, but I think that's basically there. Timber, we can get over the line. I'm very convinced we can get over the line if we end up wanting to pursue that. Pau Torres is always open, but we have competitors. But United can always make lucrative offers in the market. Nunez, told you a million times, a couple clubs kind of sniffing around now. If Mane goes, Liverpool will come in, and that's kind of a non-starter once Liverpool goes in. But a lot like the Kulo deal, or not the Kulo deal, with the Diaz deal, we've done all the legwork. So I think Benfica and United have agreed on a fee. I think we've agreed on salaries, agents' fees, and all that. So Liverpool could come in for that. The fact is, though, it's very clear the transfer business we're doing. With Tottenham, it's not super clear.
It's not, is it?
No, it could go one way or the other, and no one really knows really strictly who they're going in for. I know Bastoni is another one. Cool, he's a good defender, but the chances are he wants to stay in Italy. They all do. All top Italian players, whether they're young or old, do want to stay there. Perisic, we kind of knew was happening from the very beginning. Gabby seems like a smokescreen. Arsenal, despite their position and what they know they need to pay, just pay. Otherwise, you're not getting the players. And the fact is, haggling over, again, £5 million isn't going to get you who you want. But then it's even up in the air past that. So Hickey, Gabby Jesus, it really becomes something where beyond that, no one really knows. So Hickey is obviously a very realistic signing. Gabby is someone that they want and need, but they're haggling over a price. both those two clubs, Tottenham and Arsenal, don't seem to be moving really intelligently in the market. The one thing I will say that Tottenham has on their side is they do have money and they do have the pull of Conte. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them get some players in. Arsenal, on the other hand, I don't know. But the fact is, there's a lot of unknowns with both of those clubs.
I mean, just in your opinion, I know it's hard to say because we don't watch Tottenham week in, week out. I've watched probably seven to 10 games this season of Tottenham. I try and watch as many football matches as I can. I watch every Liverpool game. I've seen every Man United game this season, which hasn't conflicted with the Liverpool game, which genuinely it doesn't, which is great. With Tottenham, as I say, it's been a mixed bag from what I've watched. And you've got your ever presence in Harry Kane and Son, Kulusevski since January when he's come in has been fantastic. But there's a number of players in the Tottenham team which they don't really fill me with confidence. They're not really players that I kind of go, yeah, he's brilliant, or he's a top class player. I'm not convinced about Hugo Lloris. I think he stays. He has, in my opinion, he's the worst of the best. He's the sixth best goalkeeper, probably in the league. He's not great. Probably, maybe would be looking at getting replaced in the next season. Not this one, the one after. I would suggest that's probably a likely situation to occur. Defensively, Emerson Royale. He's not it. He's not great at all. Christian Romero, probably their standout centre back. Eric Dyer has been converted into a centre back. Ryan Sessegnon has never really lit up. He showed a great signs with Fulham. He was an exciting young player. Liverpool were heavily linked with him. Never kind of materialised. They paid a good fee for him. We're seeing a little bit more of him under Conte. I think he fits better in the Conte system, so that'll be interesting. Midfield-wise, I mean, I don't know. Højbjerg, Bentancur, there's no name. I think there's a lot of players. Who do you think's their most important positions then? Don't forget names, but where do we think they need to improve on?
They need a new right back. 100%. Reguilon is a good player. The problem is he's injury prone. Yeah. And he does have a stinker in him. Lloris, obviously, they're just going to continue with him because he's club captain. And
Jamie.
Yeah, what up, Jamie? And he is a good player, but he had some contractual stipulations that they wanted to put in that United was never going to agree to. So they kind of got him over us because I think it was this summer coming up that if Real Madrid want him, they can buy him back for something like 20-25 million. Pounds. Sessegnon reminds me a lot of Jordan Ibe, sort of could have been like good players within their own right on their own day, but just never gonna make it in the end. I think midfield is where they need to be looking, and I think a right back would be a good place to start. Strikers, they do need someone else to add in there, but
we'll put Jamie's comments up here. This is an interesting point. Midfield still needs improving. I couldn't agree more with you, Jamie. That's definitely somewhere for me that doesn't fill me with any confidence. Tolisso, who's just left Bayern Munich, actually is available on a free. Would be a good sign, provided he stays fit. Maybe a chance a league will do him good. Do you know what, Jamie? I think that's a really good shout, actually. He fits that profile of Tottenham, who would be more than happy to sign players on frees and, get those kind of deals across the line because they seem to do really well when it comes to bringing in players from those sort of situations. So Tolisso could well be a player that they're looking at. And if it's an opportunity for them to pick up a player on the cheap, pay him, kind of mid-round wages, I think that would probably work out for them. And for me, the only thing I would add to, I do think they need a midfielder, definitely a good quality midfielder such as Tolisso. So Jamie, thanks very much for that comment, mate. A right back, absolutely, because Emerson Royale is, he's frightening at times in his decision making, in his general play, defensively. There's a lot to be left desired in Emerson Royale. And the other player, the position that I would add for me is centre back. Christian Romero has been good, has been brilliant. But there's a marked notice when they lose a player, when they lose into injury, when they miss him. There's a real drop down. Eric Dyer is good. He's a decent centre back. No problem with him at all. But he's a converted one. So for me, I do feel that they lack options within the centre back situation. So for me, bringing in a centre back would also be really important for Tottenham, to kind of shore up the defensive situation that they've got. I'm not having chicken royale thanks to Emerson Royale memes. Yeah, and that's it. He's known as Emerson Big Mac in Europe. But yeah, that's the only time I'll use that one tonight. So yeah, I mean, anyone who's obviously in the chat, if you just put a like on the stream, we really appreciate it. Anyone who's watching, just stick a comment in. Any of your thoughts, any players that you would think that will come in at Tottenham? Where do you think Tottenham will end up next season? Do you think they'll get fourth? Do you think they'll miss out? Do you think Conte stays? For me, I think he has one season of patience with them. And if he doesn't get what he wants, I think he leaves. So if you disagree with me, throw it out there. Tell me what's going on. That'd be brilliant. 100%. No, I agree with that one. So yeah, we're probably going to the point in the show, Jesse. We're going to put the link out. I think we'll put the link out. If anyone wants to come on, jump on the chat. We'll listen to your views and get your point out. We'll really appreciate it. So Jesse's just going to stick that in there now. For anyone who wants to come on and just have a bit of a chat with us. Jamie's just put a little comment in there for you.
This is one right here.
This
is a very, very good one. I would take him at United in a heartbeat. He was playing right back. He plays right back for Nottingham Forest at the moment. I think he's on loan from Middlesbrough. I think he'd be available for a decent fee. And by a decent fee, I think he'd be a very good Premier League right back. And I think it would cost you £20 million, which for Middlesbrough would be, I mean, they'd take that in a heartbeat, wouldn't they?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So
he's done well, hasn't he? He's been quite. He was part of the Nottingham Forest team, hasn't he? That's helped him come up into the Premier League. Is that right?
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, he's done well there, hasn't he? He's took his opportunities. He's probably going to be in demand, I would say, and I think coming into a team like Tottenham, he would be a homegrown player, which fits into the quota. He will have a lot to prove. He's young, but the price is right. 20 million probably would do the deal more than likely. Ismail, okay. Jamie, Ismail Assar from Watford, maybe. Now, this guy has been constantly linked with Liverpool every single year since he kind of broke into that team. He's has a lot of talent, and I'm just thinking attacking wise, Jamie, I'm just thinking as to whether or not there would be enough space for him on Son's side. I don't know whether or not he would ever really be able to break in. He's been a little bit hit and miss at Watford. The player for me who has done fantastically well at Watford would be Emmanuel Dennis, who's had a fantastic season. He ain't going to stay. He's definitely leaving. He's been linked with a number of clubs. And I would say, for me, I think Emmanuel Dennis could be an option for any team from probably fourth down to mid-table. He would be a fantastic signing for them. So, yeah, Ismail Assar, if the price was right, would be available and would be an interest to a number of clubs, mate, but definitely. That.
Wait, just real quick. Sarr kind of reminds me of Gray from Leicester. When he moved
Gray,
over. Yeah, a little bit of that. Was it Leverkusen that he moved over to?
Yes, it was. Murray Gray was very cheap, though, wasn't he? He was only was he £1 million?
It's very cheap, but for the money, he's much better than that. I didn't really understand that transfer at all. And when I saw it, I thought I had missed something. And obviously, he came back. Who did he come to this season? Was it Everton, or was it last?
Yeah. He's had a season at Everton, and he's scored a few goals. He's done well. But I mean, as I say, for £1 million, he was a bargain. He was a fantastic signing, to be honest. First piece of good business Everton have done for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those that really made no sense to me. So, yeah, no, I think we can continue on. You were about to transition, but
yeah, no, of course. So I'm just trying to think now. This is the interesting one with Tottenham. It's I don't know where their season goes next season if they don't get the right signings. For me, Tottenham are a very sort of unknown entity. They can be brilliant, they can be awful. So with that, Jesse, probably coming up to the end of our stream, I think. There's a lot of unknowns at the moment. I think we covered a lot when it comes to Tottenham. So with that, I just want to obviously just say thank you for everyone who's obviously watched the show. Jesse, thanks very much for coming on. I think it's been an interesting chat. And oh, hang on, sorry. Just before we put out there, I'll go into Jamie's comment. Jamie is saying, I think Sarr is a bit overrated. Apart from a season in the Championship and a game against, sorry to say it, Dan, Liverpool, yeah, brace against them. He's not been good for a year now. And, mate, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. I think he's had a very poor season. He was a real good opportunity for him to kind of stand out and put himself in the shop window to get a big move. And I think that ship has sailed. I think Watford have missed out on an opportunity too. They put such a high price tag on him. I think they looked at about £50 million when he had that decent season. They probably would have got rid of him for 35. So yeah, I think everyone's missed out on that situation. A lot of potential, but I'm not sure whether or not he's ever really going to make the strides up to where I think we all thought he might have gone. But yeah, Jamie, thanks very much for that comment, mate. So with that, I just want to say thank you from Talk Football. If you've enjoyed what you've watched, I'd really appreciate if you can put a like on. If you could subscribe to our channel, we're going to be doing another show on Wednesday. We're going to be covering Manchester City. We're going to have a look at their season. We're going to look at what's going on for next season, their transfers, the people they might bring in. Is it going to be, will it be all in or all out when it comes to the Champions League? Is this the last season for Pep Guardiola if they don't win the Champions League? So, yeah, a lot to discuss, a lot to unpack. We hope to see you there again. But until next time, thanks very much for watching Talk Football, and we'll see you all next time. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. See you.